Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. Hope you had a great holiday. First CNN program of the new year. I've been on radio this past week, an abbreviated week because Monday was a holiday, but back on television today for the first time with tons to discuss. In fact, I'll just say at the outset, radio is a great proving ground Monday through Friday for what I'm then going to do on CNN on Saturday. And I don't want to just go through the motions. I always want to try and have something unique to say. And it's not always possible, but I put a lot of thought into what will be those 4 or 5 segments on any given Saturday morning because I want to maximize the exposure, the platform, the privilege. And today I've got something to say. Today I have something very unique to say on the heels of Kevin McCarthy winning the speaker fight in the wee hours of this morning. I don't know if you stayed up to see it. By now you know that he won, but do you know how ugly it got? The Washington Post story on how it all transpired, the last-minute drama that momentarily derailed McCarthy again, and then it says, before McCarthy finally clinched the speakership, there was a near brawl late Friday as Matt Gaetz delivered a blow, denying him on the 14th vote. It says this, he had 216 votes out of 432 cast, as Gaetz and Lauren Boebert's present votes essentially did not count in the overall tally. This was not enough for a majority, so McCarthy darted up the center aisle toward Gaetz and Colorado's Boebert. We'll be able to show this on TV today, but I just need to read you the summary. Quickly, the GOP leader and his closest allies, including Patrick McHenry of North Carolina, homed in on Gaetz. Other Republicans came around as well, clearly trying to convince Gaetz to switch his vote before the clerk and vote counters officially counted up the ballots and gavelled the vote to shut. Here's the key part. Then Mike Rogers of Alabama, who expects to become chair of the House Armed Services Committee on which Gaetz serves, stormed toward the huddle, enraged. Roger Hudson, a member of the leadership, walked with Rogers, aware of how angry he was. Video and photographs showed Rogers beginning to yell at Gaetz when Hudson grabbed Rogers, including across his mouth, and physically yanked him back and sent him away from the group. Well, we got to see it all, just as we got to see everything that transpired since Tuesday in the 4 days of this process. But that is highly unusual, which brings me to the point that I want to make on CNN today. From the New York Times coverage, which talked about how C-SPAN had significant ratings the past couple of days, there is this, because it's a little complicated, but they cut to the chase, and this is the way that I hope to say it on television today. Usually, C-SPAN's coverage of the House is overseen by the political party in charge of the chamber, which can control what C-SPAN viewers see and hear. C-SPAN is allowed, however, to control its own cameras during the election of a House Speaker, a process that is now stretched into a 4th day. And when you watch CNN, Fox, MSNBC, you are watching C-SPAN's feed. So everything we watched came from C-SPAN cameras, and because of the unusual nature of a speaker election, we got to see everything instead of that very staid and boring image of only the speaker's podium. And my pitch today is that we be able to see that at all times. At all times. And guess whose decision it's going to be as to whether we get to see it? Kevin McCarthy. Now, do I think he's going to let us watch? Nope. And why isn't he going to let us watch? Because there was a brawl last night. And they don't want us seeing that. But we ought to get to see it all. There's a gem of a clip from a Brian Lamb interview of Tip O'Neill, the legendary House Speaker from Massachusetts. I was on the phone last night with my SiriusXM colleague, Steve Scully, talking about exactly this issue. And he said to me, have you ever seen the Brian Lamb interview with Tip? And I said, no. And he quickly flipped it to me. Remember, Steve was 30 years at C-SPAN. And in this clip, it's hysterical. It's Brian Lamb asking for enhanced, video opportunities in the House chamber. And Tip O'Neill says, never. He says, it's never going to happen. You're going to film members picking their nose or a guy taking a nap. And there's more. So they don't want us to see. But don't we have the right to see it just like we've watched for the last several days? I mean, what if there's a major piece of legislation that they're now debating? Shouldn't we be able to see? I mean, did you see earlier in the week? There have been so many things. There have been so many interesting things. Gosar and AOC having a private word. He was censured because of spreading some meme that called for her execution. There they were having a private moment. Jim Jordan had his name put forth by some of the rebels in this process. And yet we watched him, couldn't hear him, but watched him having conversation with Kevin McCarthy. George Santos. Here was Santos. He would have been the story of the week this week, except for the difficulty that McCarthy had getting elected. Well, I nevertheless found it interesting that he was like a pariah, sitting there in the House chamber all alone. The kids, the kids who came to be with parents being sworn in as members of Congress, which couldn't happen until last night, this morning, but seeing them and all of the flavor, all of the sausage truly being made. We ought to always be able to see it. And I'm going to, in my opening commentary on CNN, it just clicked for me yesterday while I was watching this. I was thinking about what did I want to say about this process, and then it hit me. It's that we're all getting to watch, and we never get to watch. And we ought to get to watch, and this is what I'm going to say on television today in a much more coherent fashion. But in my mind, and I've been consistent about this, maybe wrong, but consistent, the same principle applies at your borough council meeting, at your township supervisor meeting, at your school board meeting, in your local county courthouse, in the Supreme Court of the United States, where cameras are not allowed. But I have a very simple standard. It's this: anywhere that you as a citizen have a right to go, a camera should be able to go, and not with a restricted angle. And not from the perspective of, well, you can bring a camera only trained on the speaker's dais. No, whatever my head on a swivel can see ought to be shown at public meetings. Sunshine, what do they say? Sunshine is the best disinfectant. So that's my pitch. And that is why today's poll question, let me just see, how did we ask it? Very simply, I know. Oh, shit. Oh, very simply. Should the speaker, I went over this with Mr. Scully last night. Should the speaker allow C-SPAN cameras full access to the House chamber for all proceedings? For all proceedings. By the way, I will acknowledge in my commentary, and I'll acknowledge right now, the downside, because I know there's downside. The downside, as I see it, a couple of things. Number one, you're playing into the showboating. And when I think of the bigger picture and the discussion that I'm trying to initiate, what comes to mind is not a congressional proceeding. No, it's something from 1995. What am I thinking of? If the issue that we are discussing is public access, media access, camera access to public events, and I hit you with 1995, I hope I'm right about that. What am I thinking of? Let me take a quick look at the board. 1995. Right, Corinne wants to know for Congress. Tom Rogers, ding, ding, ding. Barbara and Teo, ding, ding, ding. Both of you win. OJ. Right, because the argument against what I'm saying is OJ. Do you know that the OJ Simpson criminal case was at that time, and I don't know if it still holds the record, the longest running criminal trial in the history of California. Why? Was it so complicated? It really wasn't so complicated. It's because Judge Ito, there's a name from the past, and all of those lawyers showboated. They were all enamored with the attention of the nation, and it went on and on and on, unnecessarily so. But don't let OJ and the fact that those personalities couldn't handle it ruin for the rest of us the idea of cameras in the courtroom. The other, if I'm being fair and I'm trying to look at this from both sides, I mean, the other argument against what I'm saying would be, and I said this on radio, how long would it have taken to conclude Kevin McCarthy's election if there hadn't been cameras showing us everything? I don't know, maybe by Tuesday. Because every time somebody got up to give a speech for Hakeem Jeffries and the ovation and the roar, and then, someone would nominate Kevin McCarthy, and then Matt Gaetz would nominate Jim Jordan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you took away the camera and we weren't watching that, they would have had less inclination to try and grandstand. I get it. But come on, it's our money. They're our representatives. You have a right to walk in. Did you ever go down to Congress and sit in the gallery and watch? You have a right to do that. Anywhere you have a right as a citizen to go and watch government function, I think there ought to be, if there's interest in it, and there is in this case, there ought to be cameras, and the cameras ought not to be restricted. So if you agree with me, or if you disagree with me, go to Smerconish.com and cast a ballot when we finish here, okay? And then watch CNN and see how I make the pitch on CNN. I mean, you pretty much just heard it viscerally, but that's what I'm going to say. The access that we just had to these proceedings ought not to be something reserved for a special occasion like the election of a House Speaker. All times. I liked the camera angle. Like, it was so unusual from up above. It was like in an NFL game. You never see that. And I'm sorry, I'm getting too long-winded on this. Something that I'm not going to say on television today. The person who figured all this out, the power of the cameras in the House, Newt, and he and Tip had disagreements about it because Newt Gingrich realized that at the end of the day, he could come in and speak for 60 seconds and set the tone, and that it would be shown on a loop, on C-SPAN thereafter, and that a bunch of us, people like us who are interested in government, are going to watch. And that became the moment when Tip O'Neill recognized the power of the camera in the chamber and wanted to restrict it. And I'm sure Kevin McCarthy is going to want to restrict it as well. Even though I'm sure he was thrilled that it showed him ultimately winning because of that brouhaha last night, that Donnybrook, there's a name from the past, a word from the past. They don't want cameras, but I do. What else today? CeCe Moore, the genetic detective, is going to be my CNN guest to talk about the Idaho murders. Yesterday, I took the whole first hour of the program and walked through the affidavit. This is my copy of the affidavit of probable cause and all of my notes. It's an amazing story. And there are still so many questions that are outstanding. We know how they homed in on this guy, the combination of him leaving the knife sheath, the DNA on it, the match with the garbage from the Poconos, the Hyundai Elantra, and the triangulation of cellular records, and the identification by the one of two roommates who survived, DM. But we still don't know why. And as I explained to TC yesterday, motive is not necessary to prove a case like this, but we all want to know. It makes it an easier prosecution. We just don't know. It seems like there was a stalking element to this because don't hold me to this number, but I think it was 12 occasions in the months preceding, in late night, early morning hours, he was in close proximity to this house. And Gary Tuchman did a great package on CNN where he showed visually, he said, that might not sound so unusual that someone is in close proximity to a particular property. I mean, who the hell knows where they were going? But what Gary Tuchman showed on CNN is that this property, this party house where the murders took place, is remote. And you don't just drive by it. You got to be looking for it. I'll talk to CC more about that case. I mentioned George Santos. I want to do a commentary today to talk about how could Santos get elected. If his resume was so fake, so thin, so easily able to be proven false, then how the hell did he get elected? And in a pretty sophisticated area, Northern Long Island and Queens. I have thoughts on that I want to share. And Patrick Jeffson, who was Princess Diana's chief of staff, joins me to talk about Harry and the book Spare, which comes out on Tuesday. Holy smokes, the revelations of that book, right? Hey, what else would you expect from a couple? I hope TC's watching. From a couple that they just wanted to, go off on their own and avoid the media spotlight and glare. Yeah, what else would you expect except a 6-part documentary on Netflix and a 4 or 5 book deal where they reveal everything from a fist fight with his brother to a frostbitten penis? I mean, are you kidding me? Anyway, it'll be good to be back on TV. I hope you will be watching. In the meantime, would you kindly go and vote at Smerconish.com on today's poll question? By the way, give me a read here. Give me a read here. What's the group attitude on the Free Harry t-shirts? Yay or nay? Yay or nay on the Free Harry t-shirts? Do you want to see the artwork? Here, just give me an additional sec here, so that you know I'm not joking. I have to try and get somebody's email off the screen to show it to you. Ready? You ready? Nay, nay, yay, nay, nay, ha ha, no, yay, great, yay, please, limited run, nay, too much, nope, wrong, says Julie. Wendy Diamond, is not Harry already freed? Tammy, no. Catherine, huh? Fabrizio, no. Tiffany, yay. Reds, no. Lou wants a bumper sticker. All right, gang. I got to go back to work. See ya. Thank you for watching. Go vote. Go vote. Go vote at Smerconish.com. See ya.